Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have our guest, Gordon Keirle-Smith. He is the author of Another Egg, Another Life. It's actually a 2-book set. One's for adults and one's for kids. And why do you ask? Well, one book is for the adults to help them understand how to talk to their children, listen to their children about what they might be experiencing in past life memories. We're going to discuss that tonight, something as a parent I'm totally interested in. I'll tell a little bit about my experience with my child and maybe a past life memory. And I've always believed in it. It's something that just really interests me is past lives. You know, I'm a Gnostic. I question everything, but I really strongly feel that the possibility that we've lived multiple lives before is really real. And tonight, of course, what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird. So let's go ahead and roll into the show. I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we have our guest with us on Google Hangouts, which we get once in a while. It's great to have on because the audience on Facebook can see. Now, people listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, we are a webcast. If you're not familiar with the show, we are a radio show and a webcast. You can watch the show if you want at our Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup page. We live stream there the video cast, and we have guests on sometimes by video, sometimes not. But we also show pictures and photos during World Wide Web of Weird, which you can always check out later. Go for seconds, watch the show, listen, watch it later. I don't know. But we play music out. That's the benefit of listening. But let's go ahead, and first off, I'd like to say a very big happy birthday to my lovely co-host, Jamie D. Let me get her up on the screen here. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing great. Thank you so much, Jason, and I am so excited to get to spend this night with all of you guys tonight.
I'm very honored you're spending your birthday with us, Jamie, and you're one of my best friends. You look gorgeous tonight. Thank you so much for being on this show and doing it on your birthday. That means a lot to me. Well, thank you. Happy birthday. And always joining us in the paddle, Rob Archery from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing tonight, Rob? Better than not still sick, right?
Well, I'm getting over it. I'm a lot better than I was last week.
Well, we're gonna get rolling the World Wide Web Weird. I got a Florida story for you. No,
Cool.
it's got a catch though. It's got a catch. And then Pumpkin. Bill Perry P. Pumpkinhead Paranormal is joining us tonight for Jamie's birthday. He decided to hop in and hang out with us. You know these topics, Bill. I know you kind of like what. But hang in there, man. It's going to be a great show because I really love this. And tonight, joining us by video Google Hangouts all the way from France, it is 5 a.m. there, is our guest, Gordon Keirle-Smith. How you doing tonight, Gordon?
Hi there. I've been fine. As you say, a bit early, but it's great.
I always wonder, I've had guests on from across the pond. First one from France. You know, do you go to sleep and then like wake up? Or did you just burn the midnight oil and just stay up to the show?
I went to bed early, put 3 alarms on, and made sure I would be a little bit.
Well, we had a test run yesterday, so we're good to go now. But Gordon, like I said before the show, I told you anything you want to add in on the World Wide Web of Weird, just go for it. I love other people's perspectives on these weird news stories we cover. So let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. All right, tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to start off with something. They come out with this stuff. They're like, scientists imagine asteroids could be converted into starships. This is from unexplainedmysteries.com. You know what I thought when I saw this article? I'm like, I thought of that when I was 6 years old. I drew a picture of a spaceship built in an asteroid, and it took them this long at NASA to figure out you could build spaceships in asteroids? Come on. It might like sound something like out of let me get the share screen up. Like I said, late night Midlands audience, if you're listening, we do share videos and photos that you have to go see on our Facebook page. But if you like to listen, that is just fine. All right. So this is from Unexplained Mysteries. Asteroids could be converted into starships. Researchers have put forward the idea of hollowing out asteroids and using it to travel between stars. It might sound like something out of an Arthur C. Clarke novel, but the idea of using asteroids as frameworks for multi-generational interstellar ships could actually have some merit. Known as Evolving Asteroid Starship, the concept was devised by the TU Delft Starship team, a group of students and researchers who share a passion for interstellar spaceflight. Man, I would love to hang out with those guys. I'm a geek. Yes, I know. I love spaceships. Given the amount of time such a journey could take, a long-term sustainability would be crucial. We need self-sustaining and evolvable space technology capable of enduring the many decades needed to journey from our solar system to another, said team founder Angelino Vermeulen. And I'm going to butcher that. I totally butchered that, I'm sure. As part of that, we are looking at the kind of regenerative life support systems pioneered by ESA-led Melissa Microecological Life Support System Alternative Program. It gets a lot more technical stuff here, but check it out, unexplainedmysteries.com. I swear, there's a picture I made once when I was a kid of an asteroid built in this, or a spaceship built in an asteroid. But yeah, Arthur C. Clarke did it too. I had a lot of other sci-fi, but I'm like, go NASA, do something. All right, number 2 on the World Wide Web of Weird. This is the part of the show I'm going to call. Hold on. Drugs are bad. Okay. This one, kind of from Florida, Rob. This is kind of from Florida, but you're a little bit off the hook this time. He's actually from Ohio. This comes from Yahoo News. Ohio man arrested after flying to Florida. He flew to Florida to do this. He probably belongs there. To smoke a joint with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The Ohio man has been arrested after flying out to Florida with the intention of smoking a joint with the president, Donald Trump. Like, we don't know who the president is. All right, Tyler John Marone, 27, of Columbus, Ohio, flew out of the Palm Springs International Airport on April 18th, hoping 420 to get there in time, right? Hoping to meet up with the president at his Mar-a-Lago resort, reports WPTV. Marone had made the journey on the same day that Trump was hosting a Japanese president, Shinzo Abe, in Palm Beach. According to Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office arrest affidavit, Monroe purchased his plane ticket after finding a credit card and thought it was a gift from God. Man. Deputy Kathleen Zernatsky says Monroe had full intentions of driving to Mar-a-Lago, and walking onto the property to speak to the president, as well as smoking a joint with him. You go, man. You try that, right? Tyler John Monroe was stopped before he was able to drive to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president on April 18th, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office reported. Monroe told police he wanted to speak to Trump about the static and frequency feedback that he's constantly hearing emanating from the basement and from fans in my head. Man, again. Drugs are bad. Yeah.
Got to give him an A for effort, though. You know?
Right. Creative thinking. I don't know. He was arrested at the airport after being flagged by the U.S. Secret Service following comments he made about Trump. That if you're going to do it, shut your mouth about it. Posting on your social media, maybe not a good idea. After being stopped by authorities, he was also found to be in possession of a white substance, which later proved to be methamphetamines. Oh God! Moreau told officers he was
not surprise me.
He was carrying self-prescribed Adderall in his bag. I love how he self-prescribed. I prescribed it for myself, and I was arrested for drug possession. Oh man! Seriously. That's the next article. We're kind of our little drugs are bad segment. This one's scary. Why are all the crazy chicks hot? Really? Seriously? She's hot. But man,
It goes hand in hand.
Oh man. Teen dresses as clown and stabs boyfriend during sex. Here's the creepy text she sent him before the attack. 19-year-old mother was sentenced to 11 years behind bars after dressing up as a clown and repeatedly stabbing her boyfriend during sexual intercourse. Zoe Adams stabbed her then boyfriend, 17-year-old Kieran Bewick, after sending him a text stating that men are only good as human sacrifice. Dude, that should have been your first clue. That should have been your first clue. She crazy. I don't think about males unless said male is strapped up and being used as a human sacrifice. You should be grateful you're not a part of it, reads the text message. Dude, why did you go over there? I know she's hot. The duo were apparently engaging in some sexual fantasies of Adams in July of 2017, and Wilmington Cumbria Buick, wherever that is, what is that, a town or a person? He suffers from a fear of clowns. So you go to a crazy girl's house that tells you she wants to do human sacrifice, and you have her dress up as your worst fear, a clown. How did you not know that was going to end badly? That's all we're going to say.
Clowns, the whole strapping up thing, I'm good with all that, but, human sacrifice, I'm going to have to draw the line on that.
During the trial, Adams claimed she didn't remember the encounter. Oh, yeah, she's pleading, I don't remember what I did, but noted that her stabbing Buick was an overreaction to him kissing her neck. I thought he was strapped down. I don't know. What was the safe word? I think he forgot the safe word. Dude.
Krusty the Clown.
Oh, man. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, this comes from Unexplained Mysteries. Again.
Another one?
Dead men found wedged inside a toilet wall. Authorities in Calgary have been investigating the mysterious death of a man found in a public lavatory. The unidentified man's remains were found by a maintenance worker who had been called in to repair a broken toilet in the women's bathroom of Cork Shopping Center in Calgary, Canada. If you were to look at the toilet, there's a panel behind it, so when people move it, it would automatically flush, said the spokeswoman, Emma Pohl. I'm trying to imagine what this bathroom's like. It appeared that the body had prevented the flush from working, thus prompting the repair call. All things stand, the most likely explanation for the peculiar position of the body is that the unfortunate man, for whatever reason, had been crawling through the ventilation system before getting stuck. So he was trying to make it through the ventilation system into the women's bathroom. Drugs might not have been involved. Despite the circumstances of where the body was located, investigators do not suspect foul play, and the death remains classified as undetermined. So it sounds like he was trying to crawl through the ductwork to get a play peek, in the girls' bathroom.
Sure.
Or he was trying to smoke a joint up there.
No, I think he was trying to get a peek at the girls' bathroom. That was the last thing he ever did.
Creeps me the hell out.
Happy birthday, Jamie. Okay, moving on. This is more paranormal. This is I love these stories of ghost stories from other parts of the world. This one comes from Turkey. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I do, guys, check this out at the dailysaba.com. That's daily, SABAH.com. A young woman showing up at a cemetery and crying in front of a grave for 5 nights in a row has caused a stir in Turkey, central city of Kurum. I know I'm probably butchering that. Employees at the Grand UI Cemetery located in the city's Sapinian neighborhood saw the unidentified woman, believed to be 17 or 18 years of age, on the night on April 26, crying next to a grave. The same girl who is seen near the grave of Fatima C., who died in 1982, in the next 3 nights. So they believe it's this girl who died. The issue turned into a local sensation, prompting officials to leave a note by the grave on April 30th, asking the girl to contact them if she needed help or support. The police launched a search operation to find the girl as the locals were both curious and frightened by the incident. Many locals arrived in the scene to see whether the girl would come by the grave, only to be turned away by police. The girl wearing black clothing and red shoes came by the grave Tuesday night but ran away in the dark as police were trying to catch her. See, that sounds like a real person to me. They're saying it's a ghost, but I don't know. On Wednesday, the police had to set up a security barrier around the cemetery to keep away some 300 curious bystanders, with some bringing snacks and waiting to see if the girl would come again. A group of youngsters tried to enter the cemetery through the wall with a ladder, leading to a brief scuffle with the police and 4 people being detained. If it was a ghost, it's scared off now from all the commotion. But, you've heard these, there's many. It's like one of those archetype ghost stories is the returning ghost to cry at a grave, like Edgar Allan Poe's grave. That kind of thing is what it reminds me of. All right, moving on to the last, I think. Nope, we're not on the last. Number 6, real quick. News CGNTN.com. This is awful. This woman is. This is from China. She's just walking by with her husband, and her husband's holding their kid, and this dog falls and hits her. It's raining cats and dogs. She had like a fractured neck. They're looking. They don't know whose dog it belongs to. I would say whose ever balcony it fell from, and they're looking to sue, of course, for medical thing. But man, how they got to count themselves lucky. This was pretty viral. It was getting shared around a lot on social media. I have to say, this woman has to count herself very lucky. It was her and not her husband who was holding the baby. They were going to the hospital because she had a fever. The kid. And I'm sure the husband had no idea what happened.
Or
yeah, I don't know.
Off the balcony?
Right. Did somebody throw the poor dog? I mean, it doesn't look like it was landed feet first for sure. You know, and I don't know, but I hope they find out, get to the bottom of it. But thank God it, 2 seconds sooner, it would have hit that father and they probably killed that kid. So they have to count themselves lucky on that.
At least it wasn't a piano.
Right? It was raining cats and dogs. Had bump, bump, bump. Okay, last for the World Wide Web of Weird. I'm actually going to, for Jamie's birthday, one of her favorite topics is serial killers. Creepy. No, it's mine too, but this is something Jamie shared and wanted to talk a little bit about. You go ahead and take the wheel there.
All right. Well, there has been a lot of talk recently over the recent Golden State Killer investigation. They were able to get to some of that through DNA. And this is kind of a long article. I'm not going to read through it all. But they're saying a suspect calling himself the Zodiac Killer is believed to be responsible for at least 5 killings in Northern California in 1968 and 69. The suspected murder mailed taunting letters and cryptograms to 2 San Francisco papers in 69. Now, the question for pursuers, experts say, is whether or not saliva-derived DNA might have been on the stamps and flaps from envelopes, and if that can still provide usable scientific markers. It's definitely possible, said scientist Ruth E. Ballard of California State University, Sacramento. If they didn't steam the stamp off and it was stored in a cool, dry place, maybe there's still sufficient DNA left. So, something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we had Robbie Thomas on last week, and we talked about the Golden State Killer, and how they caught him with DNA, and here they go. Now it's moving. They're talking about now trying to catch, if they can get the DNA, they could find out who the Zodiac Killer is. I think he'd be dead by now, whoever did it, probably.
Definitely.
But maybe they could still find out who it was. At least bring some kind of peace of mind to the families.
Put a face to the name too. Put
Yeah.
a face to all this.
Not have a mystery. All right, guys. Well, that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. We want to get to our guests, so we're going to roll into our first commercial break. Just remember, if you're watching on Facebook, we have a little bit of quiet because we play music out to Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Go check out Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Subscribe, donate, do what you can to help keep the network alive. It's your donations, your subscriptions that help us stay on air. All right, when we come back with our guest, Gordon Keirle-Smith, we're going to talk about past lives, children's memories. All right, guys, be with you in just a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Gordon Keirle-Smith. He's author of Another Egg, Another Life. We're going to discuss the subject of Gordon's book, Awakening Children's Past Life Memories. Although initially he was a compulsive writer of poems, dramatic monologues, and radio plays from 1967 to 1973, Gordon Keirle-Smith was a visionary artist with a studio in one of London's major West End theaters, where he was also worked as a lighting technician. During that time, he produced a series of symbolic visionary paintings, which were exhibited and sold in top Cork Street gallery. Several of them well known to theater personalities who have visited this studio. Gordon has sent me his book. There's 2 versions. I mentioned this earlier. There's an adult book, Another Egg, Another Life, and then there's a kid's book for the kids that you read it to. And the adult book has all the stuff that has in the kids. It's just not as vibrant, I think. But it's ways to talk to your children and read these stories to get them to understand the concept of past lives and see if there's memories there. And this is a subject I've wanted to talk about for a long time. So let's get to our guest. You there with us, Gordon?
I am indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially for how early in the morning it is for you. But I wanted to hand over the floor to you and kind of tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in this.
Okay, well, as you said in your introduction, yes, I was originally a poet and later a painter, an artist, and what was interesting for me actually was that the type of painting I was doing was very symbolic, very metaphysical, I had a studio, in the theatre where I was working. The great thing about that was, of course, when I met attractive young actresses, I could invite them up to my studio to see my paintings, and I actually had some.
You want to come up and see my paintings? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's got some. Anyway, but there was a crucial, pivotal moment when I met an artist called Joffre Boschart, who was the founder of the meta-realist movement in the Netherlands, and he was like a mixture between Salvador Dali and William Blake.
Oh,
so he had
I gotta see that.
He has the technique of Dali, and all of his things are full of mysteries, and he and his wife came to visit me in my studio and invited me to go and spend a week with them in the south of France, and it was a week that changed my life, actually, because I realized that I wanted to paint like him and her Ellen as well, because she was also a painter. But I was just missing maybe 10 years of art school. So I decided that instead of painting with paints and brushes, I would paint with words. And that was where my first book came from, which was called Zandernatis, which was about the origins of humanity in Antarctica many thousands of years ago. And this was a book that I wrote in, what was it? It must have been the 1970s. Sent it to a few publishers who said too ambitious for a new book. And
you're not the first one to hear that, I'm sure. No. Anyway, and I revived that about five years ago, reworked it and completely rechanged it, and developed, in fact, what is sort of meta-realist literature. It's a meta-realist allegory. It's kind of like the Carlos Castanda, or how to say it, like Don Juan kind of thing, where is it real or is it not? Kind of
exactly
like that. Exactly. Yeah, I love metal realists. Yeah,
and in fact, it, as well as having the story written based on the Hakon urn texts discovered under the Antarctic ice in 1962. Throughout the book, you've got the ongoing story, but it is divided by newspaper articles, transcripts of interviews, magazine articles, all kinds of things. Even the notes.
It's all from the it was in 1962, right? You said that they went to Antarctica on an expedition, right? Yeah. So you base it off of that.
Yes, and where they found these urns under the ice containing all these mysteries, all these papers, and so. But the big question is, did they or did they not?
Well, if you believe Facebook and all the posts people make, they found something there, because everybody says, "Oh, the aliens are there," or ancient mysteries, and you hear all kinds of stories about Antarctica because it's the last unexplored place on Earth.
Yes. No, the thing is that it may not exist in the world we're in at the moment, but as we know all about parallel worlds, it's in one of them.
Oh yeah, could be real in another universe. In another universe, I might be Batman. Which would be awesome. Would be awesome. Well, the subject tonight too, of course, is we're going to talk about your book, Another Egg, Another Life. And thank you so much for sending me that book. My wife was actually looking forward to receiving that book when I told her about it. For me, when I first saw your guest proposal, I was like, oh yeah, I have to have him on the show, because as a parent, I have a 6-year-old son. It was probably when he was 4 or 5. He told me about he had a bad dream, and he says, I was in a car and it went off a cliff, and he was really detailed, like, about what happened, and that he's like, I had a different mommy and daddy, and they died, and I died. And then he shut down on me when I tried to because me and my wife, before we ever even had kids, agreed that we're open to these ideas, and I'm agnostic, and my wife's kind of a mixture of a lot of things, so we're open to the idea of reincarnation. And so when I tried to prod him a little bit, Gordon shut down, and to this day would never talk about it again, or even and I tried to be as gentle about it as I could. So I wish I had your book back then.
Yeah, I mean, that's a typical case. because in most cases of children who come out with things like that, sometimes not so violent, but it is typical for children to bring out these kind of memories when it's been traumatic, and it happens in what I call the golden years. That's to say, between the ages of 2 and 7. So it was right on, and because the children are still very much in touch with who they were before, and most children who didn't have a traumatic end to their previous life keep it buried and just get on with getting into their current life. But there's been an enormous amount of research into this phenomenon, mainly by a certain Dr. Ian Stevenson from Virginia University, who traveled all over India, gathering and documenting thousands and thousands of cases of children who remembered where they'd been before, and he would take them to these places, and there were all kinds of things that went on. Of course, in a country like India, where the idea of reincarnation is part of the culture, it's not so difficult to track this kind of thing down.
But it's where you got critics, though, is because of that too. It's like, well, of course you're going to be able to study it. This is their religious belief, there.
Sure, but I mean, but it didn't stop there, because Dr. Stevenson himself and Jim Tucker, who replaced it, who took over when he retired, have had some absolutely amazing stories in the Western world. One of the greatest classics, I don't know if you've heard about it, is the Anne Frank case.
No, there's an Anne Frank case. Somebody thinks we were Anne Frank.
They damn well are. They
really?
Damn well were.
No, I've never heard of this. Oh, I have to hear this. I Anne Frank as a book. When I was a kid and I read that affected me deeply as a book. And the movie, yes, too, but the book is what I read before I ever even saw a movie. A history teacher, a good one, made me read it.
So anyway, so what happened with Anne Frank was there was this lady called Barbara Carlin who started telling her parents when she was 4 or 5. She kept telling them that her real name was Anne. And the more she went on about it, the more obvious it became that she was talking about Anne Frank, and she'd absolutely never been exposed to the story or the book or anything. And this was quite some time ago, actually. I think I'm not quite sure the exact date, but but anyway, whatever. Anyway, but what happened, and this is the thing that blows your mind, is that they finally took her to Amsterdam. And they visited Amsterdam, and they were in the hotel, and her dad said, okay, well, maybe we better get, let's go and see Anne Frank's house. He said, I'll call a cab. And so little Anne there, Barbara, she said, we don't need a cab. She said, it's just around the corner. I'll take you there. Oh, wow. So he took them by the hand through the winding streets of Amsterdam, and they finally very soon ended up in front of the Anne Frank house.
There's no way a kid would know that. No way.
No, absolutely not. She'd never been. I mean, in that life, she'd never been there. And she said, "Gosh," she said, "they've taken the stairs away from the front." So they asked the guy in the museum and said, "What about, were there steps?" "Oh yeah," he said, "but we demolished them 30 years ago." Then she went into Anne Frank's room and she said, "Oh, Mummy, look," she said, all my pictures are still on the walls, my little photographs." The walls were bare. So said, they asked the guy again, they said, what's with the pictures? "Oh yeah," he said, "Look, up until last week, they were all over the wall, stuck on the wall." He said, "But we had to take them down because the visitors were starting to sort of fiddle with them, and maybe even some of them sort of pinch one or two of them. And we're putting them in frames, and they'll be back up there next week."
Oh, wow.
So at that point, her dad, who was really skeptical, he said, "Okay, she's Anne Frank."
Yeah, and your skepticism can only go so far, I would hope.
Exactly. And of course, she had a terribly traumatic life.
Yeah.
And this is why this is why most of the cases, about 70% of the cases, are attached to traumatic life endings.
Well, that's what I was afraid of when my kids said this. I was like, should I prod? There was a part of me at the moment. It was like, should I? Because what is he gonna start being afraid to ride in a car? Which he hasn't. He isn't. And
No.
like I said, he shut me down and has never been talked about again. And he has no memory of it now. But
How old is he now?
He is 6, and I think he was about 3 or 4 when he said this to me. I think he was 4.
Yeah.
It was a couple years ago. And like I said, he shut me down, and he just doesn't really remember. I tried to talk to him about it again not long ago, and he just doesn't have any idea what I'm talking about. But my wife was up that night, and she kind of heard some of it, I think. And it freaked us kind of both out. And like I said, I was afraid if I did prod further, and there's a curious part of me, but I was afraid, do I want to? Would he be afraid to ride in cars?
Jason, do
Yeah.
you think maybe he does remember some of it, but because it's so terrifying, he's repressed some of that, maybe because he just doesn't understand it, and it's easier just to forget about it?
That's one of my thoughts, yeah.
Yeah. Quite probably. This is why people think that trying to explore children's past lives is a sort of a very dangerous place to go. And I've had several people say to me, "Ola, hang on, this is getting creepy," until I explain why and until I explain how, because the children who've had traumatic experiences like that are really only the tip of the iceberg. And 20% of children in the golden ages between 2 and 7 can have some memories of past lives which can be stimulated, but obviously one has to do it in a way that is not going to bring up the kind of things you talk about.
Yeah.
And yet it seems to me that, well, in fact, I realized quite early that there is a huge gap in that, because our society is so materialistic and thinks that all these kind of things are weird, they steer away from it. But there is an enormous potential to be found in children's past life memories if you go about it in the right way, and avoiding anything like your son. Because it's true, if you had probed right at that moment, it could have had the kind of effects you were afraid of.
Yeah, that's what I thought about. We're not talking about, for what you're talking about, waking people so they understand. And he's not talking about past life regression or hypnosis with children at all. We're talking about talking to your children, listening to your children.
Yeah. I mean, there is absolutely no question of putting them through a full past life regression. I mean, they couldn't handle it. No. Some adults can't handle it, but I mean, but it is interesting what can come out of it. So the idea came to me that there was a need for some kind of tool to just sort of look under the surface a bit and create an atmosphere, to create a world in which they would feel comfortable about talking about the memories they might have. And even if they don't, it still introduces an interesting concept. And it doesn't matter if you discover that your son is Napoleon. I mean,
that might be some problems, but
that might be some problems. But anyway, and this was where the idea of these books came, and because it's another egg, another life, it is about the reincarnation of cute penguins, and
everybody likes penguins.
Everybody likes penguins.
Yeah, how can you not like a penguin?
Exactly.
My wife hates birds, though. So they're a little close to it. So
they are birds, but they are pretty cute. Anyway, but what was really interesting, once I started looking at penguins, there are 17 species And you start off with the first one, which is called a little blue penguin, which is tiny and absolutely super cute. And then it goes all the way up through 17 species to it goes all the way up through 17 species until you get to the emperor penguin. But there are 7 stories, and what happens is that there's this spirit, this penguin's soul called Pengos, and he moves his way up through seven lives until he ultimately becomes an emperor. And by telling the children and explaining to the children that there's the spirit of Pengos who goes from one life to another, this sort of introduces the idea, and children accept it very easily. So far, the trials and the various people who have been helping us develop it have really found some quite really interesting responses.
Well, I'm interested to read this. I just got it Thursday, but I'm really interested to see my 6-year-old's reaction, because we read bedtime stories, and I want to read this to him. I have the adult version only, but you can still read. It's got the stories in there. I want to read them to him and, kind of talk to him about it, because he's a very curious kid. He's like me, and he's got a lot of questions. And I have a 2-year-old that's going to be heading into this.
I know that's interesting. I'll send you as you've got children. I'll send you a copy of the children's
thank you.
version.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gordon.
So, I mean, for example, one child in the UK, her mother was reading her the story, and at the end of the first story, when he's in Korora, the little blue penguin, he then moves on to the next one. So she said, "Mummy," she said, "so Pengos is dead, but he's not dead. Is that right?" And so she said, "Yes, dear, that's it." So a couple of stories later, she said, "Mummy," she said, "if you and Daddy die, does that mean that you're going to come back as somebody else?" And so she said, "Well, yes, dear." She said, and she said, "So does that mean you could come back as somebody black or Chinese?"
Only through the mouth of babes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's something my kid would probably ask.
Yeah, and so with the books there are drawings, and there are questions that the parents can ask, different types of questions, quite innocuous questions, and then 1 or 2 sort of questions which might lead into it saying, can you remember something like Pengos remembered it being when he was a little blue penguin? And at times like this, it can come through, something can come through, but one has to be very gentle with it. One mustn't, this is very important, obviously, you mustn't put words into their mouths, because you're really hoping that they want to say something really, really meaningful. Right. So, and they all love, anyway, the children love the stories for their own sake. And the other activities in the book are what they like as well, because there's a colouring sections, so that they can colour the outlines of the penguins, and there are also some cartoons of different types of sports to see if they have any affinities with those, musical instruments to see if they feel any affinities with those, and even at the end, potential jobs. It's early to think about it, but still.
The question I have to that, because I've wondered about that, before I was even a parent, if you discovered your child was Beethoven, okay, whatever, something, they were musical genius in the past. You put an instrument in front of them and they're like, boom, 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 but they hate it or something. How do you know, is it just because they were that in the past, are they supposed to be that now? Should they, or maybe they're going to be something different now. They're going to do something different. That's the only thing I wonder about that.
Well, I think that there are certain cases of child prodigies, of course, in music and in many other things. And you just can't tell me that just is a question of DNA.
No.
You know, so
some
now
of these
there
kids
is
blow
one,
me away.
Yeah. I don't know if you've come across, there's an English girl called Alma Deutscher who is, I mean, she takes the biscuit. I mean, she is a virtuoso of the violin and the piano. By the age of 9, she'd written a violin concerto and a piano concerto, plus a few sonatas. And at the age of 11, she had her first full-length opera premiered in Vienna. You know, so, I mean, you just cannot say.
It took me years to learn how to play guitar, and these kids come and they just pick up these instruments and are like I was the most uncoordinated kid in the world. If I wanted to play guitar, I had to put my mind to it, you know. And then you see these kids that just have the pure talent out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, and that's a click. But there are also baseball and football prodigies. They're in all kinds of things. But as you say, maybe when you come back, you want to be something else. I have in my own case, I have been attracted to the organ, the liturgical organ, for ages. But I only got my first one when I was 30. And I really had the feeling that that was kind of planned, because if I'd had it any earlier, I would have probably just done a rerun of whatever before.
You've been just an organist. But that's the thing. You got to wonder. It's like, do you keep jumping to life, kind of doing the same thing, or do you just like, I'm going to try something completely different, or do you even get to choose when you get to the other side before you come back? It's the questions.
Various researchers say that you certainly do. That when you finally leave your physical body, you go to a place where you review your life, and where you work out really what's missing, what should be the next step to learn more, not to do a rerun. But it's, you know, I have had the feeling actually of picking up from before. There's all kinds of things that I could do naturally without having any qualifications, and they kind of worked.
One thing I am curious about is how you address in the book too is the idea of, you know, because I've heard a lot of past life stories where somebody, you know, you were a man in one life, and in the next life you're a woman. You know, how does your book address the subject of, I mean, especially now at times when we're talking about, like, you know, people are yelling, there's two genders, and there's other people like, I'm bigender and whatever, and all this argument, this could get really complicated real fast with a child. So I wonder how you cover that.
In the book for parents, there is an article on gender recognition and on the whole issue of it, because yes, it's there are people, you know, how often do you hear people who have a gender problem say, I was born into the wrong body? Right,
and it's like the elephant in the room when you talk about reincarnation. Yeah, I feel a lot of people in the shows I've listened to about reincarnation skirt around. I don't skirt around issues on their show, so I hope you don't mind. But you do wonder. I mean, I have friends that are gay. I have friends that are transsexual, and you know, a lot of them felt they were that way always. Is it? You think it is past life related? Is the question? And some people feel like that could be offensive to ask, but I think you have to ask that question.
Oh no, I don't. Honestly, I don't see why it's offensive. No, I think absolutely. People who are unsure of their gender or want to be the other gender, there is a reason for it. They've got something to learn from it. You know, for one example could be that somebody who is gay, maybe in his previous life he was a gay basher.
No, that would be great karma.
So that would be
make them understand. What's a better way to understand than living in somebody's shoes?
Exactly. And so karma is extremely fair, and is always right. You know, we always get what we should get thanks to karma. So this is something that if one starts to look beneath the surface, your children, there might be issues. You might be able to find that if there is something of a karmic nature that could be a problem, revealing it at this time of their lives, in the golden years, could really defuse the whole problem.
Well, one of the things, karma's complicated to me, though, too, because like one of the things I've heard of some beliefs in karma is if you were murdered by somebody, they'll both be reborn, and you're gonna turn and deal with them the same. There are certain religions that do believe that. Mm-hmm. That's one I can't accept, because that'd be like an endless cycle of murder. Like where does that stop, or how does that make things right? I just...
Well, no, because the second person killing the person who had killed him in the previous life, that brings you, then you're quits. You don't,
that ends it. We're even, Stephen, right?
Yeah.
I thought maybe the way it solves it is that Phil murders Brian. Let's just give them names. Phil and Brian get reborn, and Brian now accidentally kills Phil. I thought maybe that's a possibility. So it kind of like, it's not so dark.
Well,
Drop the piano on you, dude. Sorry.
No, but I think something which I've discovered. Well, I haven't discovered it, but the one thing which is absolutely true is that nothing happens by chance.
So it's fate. Is it fate that you're destined?
No, it's not fate. But I mean, everything that happens to us is in line with the results of what we've done before.
No such thing as coincidences.
Exactly. There's no such things as coincidences. I mean, once you start looking for coincidences and synchronicity, I mean, once you start realizing what it is, you can't stop.
Oh yeah, I've looked deeply at my own life and seen so many synchronicities that led me here doing this. What I like to do, I definitely believe in it. I call it. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm wearing my Star Wars shirt tonight. I believe in a force, that the universe moves by, and like I said, I'm a Gnostic, so I'm kind of on the fly with my religious beliefs. But, I believe there's a force, a will or whatever, that is like guiding us towards a certain destination.
Sure. Now, talking of religion, I don't know how many people know about this, but anyway, up until the year 553, reincarnation was part of the church's doctrine. And it wasn't until Justinian and his amazingly unbelievable social climber wife, Theodora, it wasn't until they came along that it was part of the doctrines. And one of the reasons why they didn't, why they stopped it, was that Theodora, who had actually been a sort of the equivalent of a call girl and worked her way up to become the mistress and then the wife of the emperor, she wanted to be like the Roman emperors and empresses, that's to say gods. Mm-hmm. Now, if you believe in reincarnation, if the idea of reincarnation is around, this kind of shoots that one in the foot. So she sort of organized things in such a way that it was introduced. And when you think about it, it's a great weapon. I mean, if you say to people, listen, you've only got one life. If you don't do what I say, and I know because I'm a priest and I've got a direct line to God, if you don't do what I say, you're going to go to the hot place.
Yeah.
You've got one chance.
Instead of you get to come back and try again, people, it's no, you never come back. You go to a burning hot fire and tortured for eternity. Yeah, it changes people's perspective.
Well, yeah. But so in other words, religion, unfortunately, has been turned into a political tool.
Oh, yeah.
So
religion and politics, they go all the way back before Christ. So
yes.
And it still is. But do you think people in the West are now becoming more accepting of the idea? Because For me, my family, I was raised to basically you discover your own beliefs. You know, we're a very open family. But I had friends that were Christian, and I talked to them about the idea of reincarnation, and they would just be like, "That's crazy talk." I mean, even today, a coworker of mine, when they're asking me, "Who's on your show tonight?" I'd start telling them like, "That's not real," like they didn't even understand it hardly.
Sure.
So, do you think it's being more accepted, or?
It is. I mean, I think what was the latest figure I saw? I think there's something like 25% of people in the US actually do believe, either overtly or covertly, they do believe that there's something in reincarnation.
Yeah,
and
I think movies and TV, have helped a little bit, with the idea of reincarnation. One of my favorite movies is What Dreams May Come, and and they cut a lot out of that movie. If you watch the unedited version or some of the director's cuts, and there's a lot more in there about reincarnation too. More closely to the book than it is than the actual edit of that movie. And in that they get to, at the end they're like, let's get reborn, and they actually show them get reborn. And it's pretty great. I was like, why wasn't this the ending? Maybe it was, but I always wonder if it was because it was too much for the West. I don't know.
Well, sure, but I do think that there are more and more people talking about it, and there is. I don't know if you've heard of Dolores Cannon.
Yes, I have. I've heard her in interviews before too.
Yeah, I mean, she is amazing, and I mean, and the technique that she developed, QHHT, quantum hypnosis healing therapy. This takes people. There are practitioners all over the world, and they will take you back and perhaps see the source of different problems you're having, and so there are people like her, and there are other people who are doing all kinds of things like this to raise awareness of it, and slowly, gradually, piece by piece, there are more and more people beginning to say, well, hey, come on, there is too much evidence now to ignore.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a show. It really, I don't know if they canceled or what happened. It was hard to find, but me and my wife were always trying to find it. And they titled it really awful. I think it was like "My Child is Haunted" or something like that. But it wasn't haunted. It was their past life memories.
Ghost of My Child. Ghost of My Child.
Ghost of My Child. I thought that was a horrible title.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the show was good, and there was really good stories. I think they mistitled it, didn't get a good network or something. But I was like, oh, come on, this is great. There were some really good stories, like Little Man Down. I remember that was one of the best stories as a kid. I think he was a fighter pilot, if I remember right, and his plane crashed. And he woke up in a nightmare saying "Little Man Down" or something like that.
James Leininger.
Yeah, that was a great story, great evidence. I mean, his father was completely skeptical of it all, and he was convinced.
Yes. Yeah. And there's also a boy called Cameron McCauley.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, who took his parents to the house where he was and sort of said, if you sort of look in that cupboard, that's where I kept my toys and things like that. And then actually James Tucker, Jim Tucker, who took over this research from Dr. Stevenson. He went to the island with the little boy, and and there are films of that. You can find that on YouTube.
It's incredible, that these kids, they had. I mean, some of these kids, like the Anne Frank story you told me tonight, blew me away. That she can know all that. You wonder, you said a lot of them remember because, like, the kid died in a plane, being Anne Frank, because of a tragedy like that. That it keeps their memories, somehow it's kind of scarred on their spirits, so they're going to more likely to remember than somebody who just died of old age.
Yes. Yes, sure.
Your cat's not the first one to make an appearance on the show. I've had so many guests on Google Hangouts. The cat comes up. I've had cat butts in the camera. I've had it all. Don't worry about it.
Yes, I mean, cats reincarnate too. There are lots of stories about reincarnating pets.
Oh yeah, I can believe. Well, you think about this. They talk about animal instinct.
Yes.
what is that? Is this their DNA memory? What are you talking about? I've always believed cats can reincarnate, and animals can reincarnate too. I felt like that's got to be if we can, they can. It's got to be a possibility, because it would explain so much for animal instincts and animals knowing what to do, how to nest, or, for birds. Look at birds, like they all know they got to make a nest. They all do the same thing every time. That's just built in, or they just watched the one bird do it before. They learn. If you set them alone, they'd still probably end up making a nest. There's something in their memory.
Crazier, like cats that are born inside that have never been outside, caught a bird, a rodent, nothing.
Yeah.
They'll be sitting there chirping like they know that they don't know why, but they know they want this bird.
Yes.
Birds that have been out there,
My cat does
or
it.
cats, they do that. But it's like, how do you even know you want that?
Yeah, my cat does it. She does it. Oh, yeah, that's a perfect example. My cat's never once been outside. She's too scared to. But and she's never seen a bird except through out a window. But yeah, she does that, and and she's looking for mice. She's never had a mouse in here, but she's it's all there. She's never left the walls of this house except for when she was first brought in.
I mean, there are scientists, that will explain instinct and say that a lot of it is DNA. Maybe. But anyway, but one of the most amazing examples of this are our friends the penguins. I mean, the emperor penguin, the life they lead. I mean, they have their egg, and as soon as they have the egg, as soon as the mother lays the egg, she hands it over to the father, who puts it on his feet, and they've got this sort of fold of flesh, which goes over it, and then she goes off to the sea to get food, and all the parents, all the males, stay together through the sort of the dark months of winter, all huddled together because it's like minus 50 degrees or something, and they look after the eggs. And all of that is of course instinctive. I mean, it's hardwired into them.
Right.
But
they say that's DNA. It's just hard for me to imagine that DNA would do that. They could just make them. DNA to me is what builds you, but can it be your consciousness and make you know what to do? I mean, maybe
you know what trips me out, Jason, also are like the reptiles that they have the one eyelid, but over time they start developing like a second eyelid because they're now land to water animals. Never had it before. It's like, how did they know to start growing that?
That to me is more DNA. That would be more, but it's how they act and what they do that makes you wonder. Now, that's why you wrote another book series, and we're going to be getting to a commercial break here in a second, but I do want to mention you wrote that fictional book series, Genesis Antarctica, which I'm really interested. I'm looking to buy that book because it's a series of books, right? Is it 3 books?
Well, it's 3 books. It's 3 books which you can get separately, or you can have the whole book in one volume. And there is also a really amazing audiobook version.
Well, I'm a reader. I like to listen too, but that's one I want to definitely read, because I've always wondered, if I understand the concept of the book right, is that it's what you were talking about before too, is that it's back in ancient history. People remembered their past lives. Is that what I'm kind of getting a hint of with that? Yeah, that to me that's an incredible thought. In
the Golden City, as it was called, Xandonachis, you can see it on the behind me. Everybody in this city could indeed remember their past lives, and this was the sort of age of the Golden Age in the Golden City in Antarctica, and in fact, what happens throughout the story is that at the end of the 3rd book, they actually lose that ability. And so the premise is that is what the fall of man was all about. The fall of man was when we lost our ability to remember all our previous lives.
And I've always wondered if that was a possibility. It's something my imagination's always wondered about. What would that be like to be a civilization that could remember their previous incarnations? My best thought of it, and I try to I've tried to help talk my kid about ideas like reincarnation, is Doctor Who. I don't know if you're familiar with that classic sci-fi series, but he regenerates. He still has all of his memories. Yeah. But he's a different personality.
Yeah.
Of course, non-fiction part of it is a different actor who wants to play it his way. But the story of it is he's a different person. Now he's a woman. That's a new one. But he's a completely different personality. He might have a whole new like something he liked before he doesn't like now. But he remembers everything from that previous incarnation. That's the closest thing I can see in fiction to the idea of what it would be like to be a civilization and be able to remember your incarnations.
Sure. Yeah, well, of course, in that book, you don't know whether it's true or not, because it's all based on these texts called the Harkon urn texts, because when they were found under the ice, and because it's backed up by all these different articles which all look extremely authentic. You really don't know whether it's true or not, and actually it doesn't matter. But there have been people that have written in and said, thank you so much for this book, because I remember my life. I remember living in Xandernatis,
And what do you say to that?
I say, great. I say, because, well, there are so many parallel lives. There are so many parallel universes. So for this guy, it's his reality.
When I read a book, this is my imagination. Deep Thoughts by Jason Bland. When I read a book, I always wonder, is there, because I believe in, I really feel like the parallel universe theory could be right on. Is there some universe where this is happening right now? Anything's possible in the multiverse, And when I read a book, I think about that. I feel like maybe this author's tuning into a parallel universe and this story is happening somewhere. Somewhere I'm Batman. No.
All the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have told me things about that happened to them when they were reading the book, and they really believed it to be part of their lives.
Maybe it's possible.
And maybe it's possible, because I don't know. I mean, the idea of inspiration. What is inspiration?
Right. What's muse?
What inspiration does a writer have, or any artist, or whatever? And how much of that might be coming from somewhere else? No, but I mean,
but true. It's so true.
But true. I mean, and now this is a funny story, if you like, but it does describe what happened. Now with these books, with the book of the penguins, that started. I had finished Xandernatis, and I was considering to do the sequel. And then suddenly one morning I got up and found this irrepressible urge to say penguins, and I would go penguins. I said to my wife, I said, look, don't worry. I said, I just have this need to, to say penguins from now and again. She says, okay, So, and I would go out and I would go penguins, and I didn't know what I thought. What the hell is all this all about? Why should I have this urge? And so then I started. That's what got me starting to look at penguins. And it was then that I saw that there is this amazing procession starting off from the Little Blue and moving all the way up to the Emperor. And you can see sort of it is a perfect vehicle to illustrate a soul moving on to the next stage of its ambition.
I think it's pure genius, honestly. What you've done, I think it's pure genius.
And what is interesting at the end, when Pengos finally becomes an emperor, he meets the great Grey Emperor, who gives him a choice, and he says, "Do you want to carry on and be an eagle or an albatross? Because of course what's the one thing that they can't do, penguins?
Can't fly. It's God's sickest joke.
They can't fly. They can't fly. So it's obviously, you know, a very powerful stimulus to get onto into the body of an albatross, for example. And so he has the choice of moving on and becoming an albatross or an eagle, or going back and becoming a little blue penguin again and being a guide to all the others who are coming through.
That's awesome. Well, we got to run into our second and last commercial break, and we'll take calls from the audience after that commercial break. Remember, guys, we play music out to Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. You cannot hear on Facebook. We don't want to get kicked off of Facebook. All right, guys, go check us out on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. When we come back with Gordon Keirle-Smith, I'm going to talk a little bit about my idea, my experience, why I believe in past lives, and see what Gordon has to say, and we'll take phone calls. All right, guys, we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Gordon Keirle-Smith. We're talking about his book, Another Egg, Another Life. It's actually, like I said, 2 books, one for kids and one for adults, for them to be able to talk to their children and find ways to help them understand the concept of past lives and see if they have any memories of those past lives. I truly myself believe that there's the possibility of past lives. I've had 2 really extreme dreams in my life that they've stuck with me. You know those dreams you have where you wake up and they just don't go away? Those kind of dreams. And I've always felt they were past life experiences, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. You can call in the show tonight while we're discussing. You can go ahead and call in. We have a number of ways you can call in. First is the video Skype line. If you want to have Gordon and us see you, that's the Soup live chat, 800 live chat, Skype ID. You can call in. There's the audio only if you don't want people to see you. That's Skype ID OOJBland OO or OOJBLAND Or if you want to try the old-fashioned way, you can call in by phone at 219-230-4444. If you're calling in and I hang up on you, just call back a little bit later because I might have somebody else on the line. That's usually why. All right, let's get to our guest. So, Gordon, we were talking, a little bit about that. I wanted about my kids' experience. I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal experience, what makes me believe in past lives, and get your take on it. I'm going to make it as quick as I can. There was 2 real main dreams that I had. One, the first one I ever had basically was very traumatic dream. I was a little black girl. People don't laugh. It was the truth of it. In the dream, I was this little black girl. And I lived in this shanty shack with my mother. And she's a woman who's shown up in my dreams before, this black woman. I don't know why. Don't ask me. But she was my mother in this dream. It was kind of like I felt like this dream was explaining why I've seen this black woman in my dreams before, that she was my mother in a past life. It's one of the things I thought. Well, there was a white male man. I felt like he was my father, but not. Like, probably not admitted to being my father in the dream. And my mother was fighting with him in the dream, and he ends up beating her with a stick, and I jump in and start hitting him, and he beats me to death, and graphically, with that stick. And I woke up just horrified by what I had seen in this dream, and it's stuck with me. The visuals of that dream have stuck with me ever since. And I'm like, why would I dream this? It's not like I was watching The Color Purple that night or something. You know, it was like, why did I have that dream? There's another one. The other dream I had, now this one, maybe it was just my imagination, because I have always been attracted to the Eastern religions and to Buddhism. My mom's a Buddhist. I had this dream I was a monk, and I did actually want to be a monk. Right before I met my wife, I was actually seriously looking into being a monk. But in this dream, I was a monk. And these men, like I would say Asian soldiers, and they had guns, so it could have been too long ago. They were raiding the temple I was in, and was like the Judas. I had actually turned in my head monk, I guess, because he was a liar. He was smoking opium. and I basically turned in him, and they raided the whole temple and killed everybody. And the last part of that dream is me running through the woods for my life. I don't know if I died in that one. Both of them explain my some things, especially the Buddhist monk one, because I've always questioned religion. I've always said it's innate in me to be agnostic. I don't think I could ever just choose religion. Like, I distrust it. If I was that monk and I was betrayed by discovering the person I thought was my shaman or whatever was doing opium, and it betrayed everything. That's what it was in the dream. It would explain a lot for me in my life. The little girl situation, maybe my social anxiety disorder, I don't know. But that I have sometimes, or certain situations that I have, it makes me think about that. But what are your thoughts about later in life an adult having these kind of experiences?
Oh, sure. I mean, if it should happen, it will happen. And things like that are not, again, it doesn't happen by chance. And it's very interesting about you having been having that memory of being a monk, and even thinking of being one. So is that right, that you were thinking in this life of being a monk?
I actually was really deep into Buddhism back in the day. I was in my early 20s, out of high school, and I wanted to just leave society. I wanted to meditate, and yes, don't look bad at me, people. I'm a completely different person now.
I mean, that's.
But then I met my wife, and that changed everything. I was done with the whole, I was ready to go celibate, everything. I'm not joking. Ask my wife. This is a true story. I was really looking into it. I was I would like to just spend some time in a Buddhist monastery, and look within. That's what I wanted to do. I was very much deep thinker back then. I still am, but I'm a little more cynical, I think, because I've gotten older. But I was really deep into it. And then I had this dream of the monk thing years later, probably about 6 years ago. And it was really it was a very emotional dream, and I thinking about it, if that was a past life memory, that would explain a lot. It would explain a lot of things in my life, the way I act and the way I feel about religion and everything. But it could be just my imagination. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever know until I do die.
Yes. Well, it certainly sounds to me like something, a deliberate message coming through to start you thinking. But this has raised a very fascinating point when it comes to reincarnation. Just imagine for a moment what would happen if more and more people believed and discovered the idea of reincarnation. Can you imagine how that would change world politics?
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, the Turks. If some of the Turks, a lot of Turks started remembering that they were Kurds in previous lives. If Palestinians and Israelis suddenly remembered that they had been on the other side, this would solve, but it would mean that so many conflicts in the world had no reason to be.
I just realized I didn't sign into the right ID for my Skype account. So really quick, I'm doing that in case anybody is trying to call in. Sorry, I apologize. I just realized that. If anybody tried to call in on the OOJ Bland OO line, I am getting that set up right now. I totally apologize. It's from last week's show. I had it all switched up different. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting, Gordon. All right.
I know I've been in places before and got that whole deja vu thing where, kind of like that Anne Frank thing, where I know I've been there.
Yeah, me too.
Even though I've never been there. And I've also met people, and there's a couple of them in my life right now that I met them for the first time, and there was just something completely different.
I know that feeling.
I've known them somewhere before.
Yeah, I'm sure.
My wife. I'm not saying we're soulmates, but if I could believe in it because that's how I felt about my wife. And there's other people in my life I just completely connected with before even a sentence. There's just some feeling there.
Exactly.
You wonder if you were connected to him in a past life.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's so many people have once you start talking about it, lots of people will suddenly say, well, actually, yeah, don't let my husband hear about it, but I really do believe, I really have this strong feeling, etc. And we have actually.
I was saying, you want to know what's screwed up? My wife's probably going to kill me on this. I want to mention this really quick. I had one other dream, really quick. I did have a dream where I was a woman and she was a man, but I knew it was her. I'm not joking. You can ask my wife, because after the dream, I woke up and I told her, this was crazy. I don't know how to explain this, but you were the man, I was the woman. It was really weird. It was, but it was not weird in the dream, but it's weird thinking about it now. I did have that dream once. I had to wake up and tell my wife. It was, she's like,
that is absolutely typical and complete. I would say completely normal, because that's the way it works.
But you got to see how that would be hard for.
Maybe she wears the pants in the family, you feel, or you need a little role play.
She does. She wears the pants. Oh yeah, for sure. It would
what
explain
it
a
is.
lot. It would explain a lot. But you got to understand how that's a difficult concept for people to grasp. To think of role reversals like that. It's a difficult thing for people to grasp, and they don't want to buy it. It's not just that they just don't believe; they don't want to.
There's this awful expression that goes around. How often do we hear it? You only live once. Whenever I hear it, it sort of raises the hackles on my back. It is so stupid. You only live once. I mean,
I'm a James Bond fan. I like You Only Live Twice, but okay.
Yeah, okay. But and of course, one of the penguins, he says you only hatch once.
So the penguins are non-believers too.
Oh, there are some of them are non-believers, absolutely. No, but it is the curse of our society, that phrase, and so a lot of people do things. We also use it as an excuse for some kind of indulgence. You do this crazy thing and you say, oh, well, I've only got one chance, so I'll do it, and this is so sad.
But see, some people, like I had a friend, we used to argue about this kind of stuff, and he grew up as, like I said, a Christian, and one of his points was like, well, if you don't remember anything from your past life, then what would it matter? I mean, he's like, you are who you are by your memories. Is what his point was. And I said, it's the stuff that's deep down, the feeling. You don't have the memories, but there's the knowing, the instinct that's there, and the feelings. Like, especially, like I said, when you know somebody you've never talked to, and you just instantly have this feeling between them. I've experienced that more than a few times in my life.
Sure.
We do have a caller on the line, our great caller, Zach, who always called in. And he tried calling in, and my Skype line wasn't open. Sorry, Zach. How you doing tonight?
It's all good, brother. How you doing? Hey, Rob. Hey, Jamie. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. Now, you always have great questions, so I'm sure you got a good one for Gordon here tonight.
Yep, I just have two questions. Hey, Gordon. It's very nice to meet you, man. My first question here, I'm a firm believer that there are multiple dimensions out there. My question to you is it possible for a soul to be reincarnated from a different dimension?
You stole a question from me.
Soul actually...
Sorry, Zach. You're right in what I was thinking. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, there we go. Or is the soul permanently fixated to a certain dimension? Why or why not? And if it's the former, can you provide just an example?
Wow, well, I don't know an example, but I don't see. In fact, I think it's obvious that we are the dimension we're in. I think I saw a figure yesterday or the day before, which I think it was David Icke talking about it, actually, saying that our range of perception is like 0.005% of what could be perceived. So as we move up the ladder of evolution, sure, we'll go outside the sphere of consciousness that we have now, and presumably go somewhere where there is a wider range of consciousness. So we're never asked to do more than we're ready for. But but sometimes we don't know we're ready for it, and then we get the experience and sort of we move up one rung. So yes, why not? Why not? In fact, it would seem to me logical.
Okay. Okay. Cool. And then my second question, actually, it's a question asking your interpretation of it. I had a dream a couple of years back, and it was a really weird dream because it was so lifelike, and I personally believe it might be a past life experience, but I wouldn't know for sure. But in short, if I was in a dark area and I couldn't see anything, but I could feel like someone had a gun pointed right to the back of my head, fell on the right side, and then for some reason, I don't know what started it, I said, "Make it quick." And I hear the gunshot go off, and all of a sudden I'm immobile and I fall over. Then I feel like someone is pouring gasoline on me because I could smell it, and then someone set me on fire. Would you interpret that as a past life experience? Why or why not?
Wow, it sounds like one. I mean, it's pretty
I got
horrendous.
a take on this in a second. Go ahead, Gordon. I got something to say about that.
I mean, it could be, I mean, there's no guarantee, obviously, but it is the kind of thing that people do report. And people like Jim Tucker, their research brings up that kind of thing, whether or not your experience was that or not. But it would sound to me like being a very good candidate.
PTSD can also do a lot of the same things. I've got severe PTSD. When I wake up in the morning, I have dreams similar to his, to where you look them in the eye, you feel the bullet go in you, you know you die. Every single day it's the same, but this never happened to me. But I have flashbacks to where it feels like real memories. So it's like over time, whether something really happened to you or not, those lines of what's real or what didn't really happen sometimes get blurred. And I see a lot of that with PTSD type symptoms too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what I want to say is going to maybe blow some people's minds because, okay, so I was in TV class back in high school. We would make little TV shows and movies for our projects, and I made this one called The Red Lighter, and it was basically like a David Lynch kind of style short film, silent, and with cool music though. And in it, the main scene that everything kept on going back to was the scene you just described, Zach.
Oh, wow.
I'm not joking. It's on a VHS somewhere. I'm not joking, but it literally is this kind of mob-like guy,
you have to find it,
shooting a guy in the head like that and then setting them on fire. We even set a little doll on fire. It made it look really realistic. I actually got the local cable network we played these shows on in big trouble when they played my movie because we had death, violence, drug use, all kinds of stuff going on in that film. My TV teacher was in so much trouble. Oh my God. But I always wondered why it was one of those things, like you say the muse, Gordon. I've written songs, stuff that's just come to me. I'm a creative person, maybe not as much as I used to be. But when I was in my, in high school, my senior year, and into, my college years, I was very creative, and these things would just come out of me. And that short movie, I wrote the whole thing in like minutes, and that scene was like the scene that just like burned in my mind. Maybe I murdered you, Zach, in another life. I'm not joking. That's what I'm thinking in my head when you're saying this. I'm like, that is the premiere scene of that little movie I made. It was like, no matter what I did around that movie, that's the scene I focus on. I had to have like the fire scene. Like people are like, you can't do the fire, man. That's too dangerous. I'm like, no, we have to have the fire. This is the important scene. This is the scene that I made this all about. And when you said that, I was like, because me and Zach, we got a connection. He's called in the show for almost 2 years now. We have like some kind of connection going on here, as friends. So maybe, Zach, maybe I murdered you.
I love you.
I will remember not to get on your bad side. I will not get on your bad side at all. And then, I just have one more question, but it's actually at Jamie. Jamie, from what I've been hearing, is it your birthday today?
Little birdie may have said something like that.
Just don't ask her how old she is.
Well,
I just have one thing to tell you. It's your birthday song. It is a very long. Hey.
That's awesome,
Thank
Zach.
you, Zach. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much, man, for allowing me to call in tonight. I greatly appreciate it. And Gordon, thank you so much for answering my questions. I greatly appreciate it. I love everything that you're saying, man.
Thanks for calling in. Thanks for calling in, Zach. I guess it's a good thing you live in Arizona and I live in Indiana.
See, he knows
I'm
where
not
you
joking.
live already.
I'm really serious about this. When he said that scene, I'm like, that is something I always wondered where that came from me. I'm not a violent person. I really am not. But that scene that I made, it was, yeah, that was it. All right,
You're
Zach,
going
you
to
have a
have
good
to
night.
show him that scene though, just to see how he reacts, and like
Yeah, he's got
film
a
him
VHS
watching
player.
it, so you can actually see him like turn white and stuff as he's watching it.
It's on a VHS somewhere buried.
Shoot a reaction video.
Zach, like, I'm never calling into the show again. All right, man, have a good night.
Have a good night, brother. Take it easy.
All right, bye. Again, people, you can call in at OOJBland. OO is the Skype ID for the audio on the line. Soup, live chat, 800 live chat for the video Skype line, or call in by phone, 219-230-4444, 219-230-4444. The other question, I'm sure you've gotten this in interviews before, is, and I know you're not the reincarnation expert or researcher, that's done the research of cases, but you're familiar with them. What's your thoughts of people coming, like they were born on another planet? Because one of the things I've always felt like, yeah, I definitely had a past life on another planet because this place seems so screwed up.
Well, I mean, it is so, it's almost as bad as saying you only live once. If you don't sort of take on board the idea that there must be millions of planets out there with different lifestyles and things to learn, yeah, I mean, absolutely. One thing that you will hear people say is that, they say, I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't think it's possible because I don't want to come back as a worm.
Right. The animal theory that you're going to come back as a cow or a sheep or something.
Yeah. Whatever. And I mean, this is, if anything, the laws governing incarnation and reincarnation and karma and all this are logical. I mean, what now, us as being living in Western societies, what we live in now, what would be the point of coming back as a cow? So
yeah, you'd be on the menu at McDonald's. You don't want that. I wouldn't want nobody wants to come back as a cow, at least unless you're in India.
Unless you're in India.
Yep. Well, that's why,
Yeah, no, I mean, now obviously in India there are certain aspects of it that do, well, they've been hijacked in a way, some of the ideas, and in the same way as Christianity said, okay, you only live once, and you're going to stay in the grave until you resurrect, and all these rather, when you think about it, really, really weird concepts, and which don't have much to do with a loving God, I would say. Anyway.
No, I'm right there with you. That's sorry. We don't try to offend anybody. Everybody has their religious beliefs, but yeah, a lot of things. People look at me that have given me that weird look when I talk about reincarnation. I'm like, well, look at your religion. Is it any weirder than what the stuff you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and so hello, she's here again. I'm sorry. She's
the person she was the person that annoyed you in a past life, and now she's just your cat.
Exactly. Anyway, so I think it's perfectly logical, yes, that we do live on other planets and in other dimensions.
Like the parallel universe thing. Like I said, Zach stole. I was going to ask that question tonight. I knew he'd probably beat me to it, but it is an interesting idea. I mean, the idea that it could explain a lot too when people have like a past life memory that doesn't make sense with historical records. That it could still be true. It could have been a past life in a parallel universe.
Yes, that is. Of course, that could also be the perfect get out answer.
It is the perfect get out. It is. If you go with the theory.
No, I mean, sure. I mean, and I think we're sort of a bit like a train, sort of traveling down a track, and there are at various points there are points, and that we can turn onto another track. And we might be going through the same countryside, but it'll be a slightly different experience. And from the minute to the enormous, this is where we have a choice, and how we can actually guide our lives and steer our lives to make sure that we're on the right track. I mean, maybe in some people's universe, World War III starts tomorrow. We just want to hope that we're on the track where it isn't.
I don't know what
And
track we're on. It seems pretty crazy right now, but some things are pretty good lately. So I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that everything, things are in turmoil, and yet there are a lot of people seeing more reason in these kind of ideas, and who see them as a way out of the as a way out of as an answer to why everything seems to be so screwed up.
Yeah, to me, reincarnation, if it's true, I really do believe it is. It would explain a lot of things. It explains so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you wonder. I mean, I had friends once that they had a Reiki. They both went together for Reiki. This is in high school. They were seniors. And they went to this Reiki thing, which I'm like, what's Reiki? Back then, I didn't know. Now I do. And they both had these visions, during their sessions, and compared notes. They actually both saw some of the same things of being on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had Lord Lee Johnson, a psychic medium that we had on the show, tell me, because I've always had a fear of water myself. I didn't do the Reiki thing with him. She didn't tell me I was on the Titanic. She's like, I didn't tell her about my fear of water, but my love of ships. That's weird. It's a weird combo. I love ships on the sea, but I have a deep fear of the water. She just comes out of blue, and I didn't tell her this at all. She's like, oh, you had a past life. You were on a ship that went missing in the Bermuda Triangle. There's a photo out there of you somewhere, too, if you could find it, of you on this ship. That's what she said in the show. And I've been looking. I haven't found it, but it would explain a lot, and you wonder how many of the phobias people have would be explained by if they looked into their past life.
Well, I've got an example of this. This is our son, who we adopted actually in Brazil, and from about the age 2, he would get a staple gun and about 30 sheets of paper. You go away and you come back, and there's a Titanic in 3D, complete with watertight compartments.
Oh wow!
And they started off, sort of this big, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Then he started making them in wood, and he sank 3 of them in the swimming pool, and he was really, really obsessed by Titanic.
How old was he when he started the first one? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, he was about 3.
Wow. Yeah.
And then when he was about 6, my wife had a friend in Zurich, and we went to Zurich, and they had this amazing Titanic exhibition. And he went there, and in the entrance there was this enormous photo of the people on the deck on the 12th, on the 10th of April, as the boat was leaving Southampton for its maiden and last voyage. And he went straight to this photo, and he pointed, and he said, "That was me."
Oh, wow.
And he turned round at us and said, "But don't worry, I didn't die." And so he continued building his Titanic ships. And at the time, I wasn't really tuned into it. I only wish I'd explored that a bit more at the time. But anyway, but another interesting thing is that he was supposed to be born on the 5th of April, and my wife was there in Brazil, waiting for him to be born, and he actually waited until the 10th of April to be born.
Oh my God. The day it sunk, right?
The day it left
the ship. That's when it left. I knew it was around that time.
And the day that photo was taken.
Oh wow.
And,
that is crazy.
And now he's 24. And last year we went to Belfast. We went to Ireland and went to Belfast, where there is an absolutely fabulous Titanic exhibition. And he really wanted to go. I mean, now you would think, okay, 25, maybe he thinks it's something else. It's a load of hooey, and that's, you know.
Right.
But when we came back, he said to me very seriously, he said, actually, he said, I did die, and this is my photo. And he looked at all the photos, and he identified one particular guy, and he's there at 24.
So did he? Now he's saying, is he saying he died on the Titanic?
Yeah.
But as a little kid, he was like, "No, don't worry, I didn't die." Just to like ease your guys' mind.
Maybe he just wanted to reassure us. I don't know.
Kids are, you know what? Kids are like that, though. I can believe it. My son would do something like that, you know, to keep you from freaking out, you know, about it. Yeah. That's incredible. You know, that reminds me. There was I think another one of those episodes of that show, "The Ghost of My Child." Was a kid who believed they believed he was the guy who built the Titanic. And he did a lot of the similar things. Remember, he was building models of the Titanic. He was obsessed with it. He knew he knew intricate details about the Titanic that most people don't know unless they're a real big time researcher. That was in one of those episodes. And then later in life, he doesn't really remember any of that. But he was all into it as a kid.
Of course, you know, now we're getting the 9/11 generation. There are now lots of people who remember that. I mean, and that's. There are so many, you know, I mean, this has got to go mainstream, you know, one day soon, because there are so many people.
It all depends on, you know, I think people are waking up to these things. That's getting more accepted by Western society and fiction and in the news and in stories and in social media. People are more open to talking about it. I definitely see an awakening spiritually, you know, at times when it seems like we're not, you know, when things are really bad. But I think there is a part of this of the Western society that is waking up to this concept, to this idea about time. I don't know what it'll take to make them really believe, though. You know, I don't know. I think it's all individual experiences for belief.
Sure. But in the book, for example, the issue of death for the penguins, you know, obviously has to be addressed.
Oh yeah.
And what the way that I've done it is that there's one of it's in the third life, and the penguin, who is a Gentoo penguin, is called Gentos, and he actually gets eaten by a seal.
Ooh, bad end.
Bad end. And he feels the jaws of the seal biting into his flipper, but at that moment he leaves the body. So Pengos, the spirit, the penguin spirit, rises above and looks down and sees poor little Gentos being finished off by the seal. But he is doing this. Yeah, he's doing this thing that penguins can't do: fly. So he's left the body and he's flying around like an albatross.
He doesn't feel any pain.
And he doesn't feel any pain, and so he's just looking forward to the next life.
I've heard some of these kids' stories that have had these past life experiences. Some of them talk about leaving their body, like they remember the whole death. You know, I've heard of these. And it's, you know, and like even picking their mom and dad. That's
another thing. I mean, there are stories they almost have them lined up like in an identity parade, you know, and they'll say, "Well, so I'll have those two." It is arguable that we do have a choice, and I mean that seems logical too to me.
For people with really bad parents, they're like, "No way." But you don't know what you would choose. You know, your incarnate self. You know, there might be a reason why.
Yeah, there are all kinds of. I mean, for example, children who die very young. They are in many cases. It's been suggested that they have actually made an offering, as it were, of themselves or of that particular life because the parents need to learn something.
I've also heard, when you get into reincarnation, it gets touchy. I've also heard that, you know, they've said people who committed suicide, the end of their life before they were supposed to, can be reborn as children who die young. It's like they have to make up a certain amount of time or something along those lines. It's like a karma thing, a karmic.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that would make sense. That would make sense. Once you start to see things from this perspective, it can change a whole wedge of things. And
I think it's tough for people, though. I think it's tough for people to think about these things because for the instance of the suicide, people, I've known people that committed suicide, and to think, well, then the worst thing to imagine is a child dying young. It's like you got two tragedies that this person's experiencing as a soul. The tragedy of taking their own life, and then the tragedy of dying young. But it's supposed to teach them how precious life is. I guess is the point.
Sure, but I mean, but it's just another lesson. It's a fairly tough lesson, but I mean, it's just one lesson out of many.
What would be like somebody? This is speculation, of course, but I mean, what do you think for somebody like we have to go this route, but like Hitler? Does Hitler get reborn? And how does that work out for somebody like that?
Well, I mean, let's say that Hitler enabled a whole load of people to experience what it's like to be a hero, and also to go through the horrors that happened. It gave people an opportunity to live the best of themselves and the worst of themselves.
My hope is that Hitler came back as a half Jewish, half black man. Or woman, absolutely. I don't care, but at least something like that teach
exactly them. Because if that idea had been put around, then the whole racial thing would have been completely nullified.
It would teach a lesson to him quick.
Yes.
This is
why.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why it is so important to raise awareness of reincarnation among everybody, and that's why it would be nice to think that this book, these books could actually trigger something in some people somewhere. It's already actually there is an interesting story. There's a family in the UK. A friend of mine heard about this girl who had going to school had pointed to a plot of land and said, "Oh, look at that White House, Mummy. Oh, and look at the postman coming with that funny cap and she described the cap. And so this friend of mine, he thought, well, this is interesting, and he sort of looked up records of in the local land registry and discovered that there had been a White House there up until the 1930s, and the type of cap she was describing was what postal workers wore at the beginning of the century.
Wow.
And so he told me about that. I said, give them a copy of the book. So she gave them a copy of the book, and the mother was very interested and started reading it to her. There were no further disclosures of any particular kind. She loved the stories of the penguins. The kids, they always like the stories for what they are anyway. And then she, but the mother started to become really interested. She was skeptical at first, but she got more and more into it, to a point where her husband called up my friend and say, "Hey, James, what is this you've been giving to her? And he said, because she seems very excited. She seems very happy. And anyway, the long and the short and the tall of it was that she heard about QHHT, and my friend James went and had been actually just to have a QHHT session, and she is now a complete convert to the idea of reincarnation. And in fact, what are we today, the 6th, exact on the 11th of May, she is going to have her QHHT session.
Wow.
So she's going to do a full-blown past life regression session, which they last about 4 or 6 hours.
I've always wanted to do it myself. I've always wanted to experience, try that and look see what I find. I'm just so curious. I would love to be able to do it.
It's mind blowing. I mean, it really is. You come out of it a different person.
Well, Gordon, before we go tonight, we usually end right at midnight, but our network's getting a lot more shows, and we're trying to keep the shows down to make sure they're 2 hours, especially when they replay my show. So we do have to start closing it out. But I want to make sure you get out any of the information for people to find your book, contact you, or anything you want to last give out to the show. The floor is yours.
Sure. Okay. Well, we have a site. So www.reincarnation Antarctica.com. You can find the books on Amazon, and that's it really. I mean, you'll be able to find ways of contacting me through the site, and if you do Gordon Keirle-Smith on Google, you'll find all the different places where I've been. So that's it, basically. So if you're interested, you will find on the Reincarnation Antarctica.com site, you'll also find some videos. We're starting to do quite a few videos. One of them is sort of walks you through the book and the stories, and I hope people will find them useful, and I hope that we'll hear from people to see what kind of experiences they have, because we want to have we're going to have a section where people can post their experiences, and let's see if we can get this ship moving.
Definitely, and I definitely want to check out your other book or series of books, Genesis Antarctica. Because that's just right up my alley of reading for sure. So it sounds really interesting. So thank you so much, Gordon, for being on the show and joining us so early all the way over across the pond in France. It was really an amazing show with you tonight, and truly thankful for the book. And you said you sent me another one, the kids one. I'm totally happy about that. That'd be awesome. I am.
That's all in gorgeous color.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm totally looking forward to reading it to both my kids, and because I want their minds to be open to these concepts, and if anything, I think it will show them.
Well, keep in touch and let me know, huh?
Yeah, I will definitely. If anything comes out about it, I will definitely let you know, Gordon. Thank you so much.
Right.
All right, guys, that's it for the show tonight. Check out Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Go to our website, subscribe, donate, do what you can to help keep this network going. Without you, we don't have a network, so help us. All right, guys, next week we're going to have James Goy, Money Guru. Help us learn how to make some more money. It's not like a info commercial or anything. This is a kind of a spiritual side of it. People tell you to read The Secret or whatever. It seems whenever I've been down on my luck or broke, people are like, have you read The Secret? I'm like, shut up. But this guy seems really interesting, and I definitely want to hear it, because there's certain things you can do to help make that money flow come to you. So I'm sure some of you guys are going to tune in. I would. I'm always broke. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Check us next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Check us out on our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. Check us out on YouTube on Paranormal Soup. And check us out on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. All right, guys, see you next week. Have a great night.